This is part 3 of assignment 5, where we will be looking at update and doUpdate, and depending how long that takes, we might go into delete and make it part of this video. This should go faster than the insert, largely because we're going to be able to copy and start with that insert page. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by taking this insert.php, copy it, paste it, and I'm going to call it update.php. And then I'm going to come back to Dreamweaver, do a refresh on my files, and open up that update.php. Now update.php is exactly like insert.php, except we need to auto-populate the form fields. So we're going to need to go and copy a few things out of the select page. So I'm going to open up the select page, and I'm going to look for this part right here. I'm going to grab that first part where we've got SQL equals, the result equals, the if-else statement. I'm going to copy that, come over here into update, and ahead of the form is where I'm going to place this. So in this, we need to actually select the shipper with shipper ID equal to 2, and that's what we're going to auto-populate. So we're going to modify this. We're going to change the column. So select shipper ID, company name, and phone from, and this one's going to be Shippers Lab 5, where shipper ID equal, and for this assignment, for right now, we're going to hard code the number 2. After I finish this set of videos, I'm going to create another video that'll show how we can modify this entire solution to make it a little bit different. But for right now, to make this assignment easy, or easier, we're going to just hard code that we're going to use number 2. So we've got our SQL query there. We send it to MySQL here to be executed, and then we check to see if we have any results. We will either have 1 or 0. There's either going to be one record with shipper ID 2, or there will be none. So those are the two options that we have here. And we're going to modify this if-else a little bit. In other places we've left it alone, but this if-else here, I'm going to put the curly brackets around it, and it's the else that we're going to add a piece to. So in the else, basically we're saying that if there is a record, we want to grab that and put it into a variable. So we're going to say row equals MySQL fetch array, and pass it results. So we've just modified this if-else a little bit. If the result is empty, set num results to 0, and we're not going to be able to display anything in here. Otherwise, if there is a record, let's go ahead and grab that record and put it into this variable. Now before we go and try to auto-populate things, let's do a check, and we're going to have if, and we're going to check the number of results returned back to us, and if the number of results is in fact equal to 0, then what we want to do is set that error message once again in the session variable. We want to set that equal to something to let the user know that there's a problem. You must first insert a shipper with ID 2. So that error message is then going to show up if number of results is equal to 0. We're not going to be able to update that field. Now we've just got to come down into the form, and we're going to modify the form a little bit. We're going to leave the label here for the shipper ID. I'm going to make this so that we can maybe see it just a little bit easier on the screen. We've got an input type equal text, name equals shipper ID, and so on. And what I'm actually going to do with this particular one, actually let's before I do that, let's go ahead and auto-populate the fields. So into this input for auto-population, you'll remember we need value equals. And inside of that value equals, inside of the double quotes, we open and close our PHP. And inside of there, we are going to echo out the value. But we're going to actually wind up having more than that. But for right now, let's do an echo that has $row with shipper ID. Now, this becomes problematic for us if that does not exist. So we had an if statement up above that said if the number of rows is 0, set an error message. We're going to need an if statement in here that catches if the number of rows is in fact 0. And so that's going to look like, let's actually break this out. I think I've done this before, but let's actually break this out so that it looks a little bit more like PHP to begin with. We're going to have an if statement, and in that if statement it's going to check for num results not equal to 0. So if the number of results are not equal to 0, then let's go ahead and echo out that value. But in addition to that, we mentioned this on in one of the other videos, whenever you are writing something out from the database, we've always got to use trim, because you may have only stored 10 characters into a 40 character slot. When you pull it back out, you're getting all 40 characters. And actually I messed up there a little bit, didn't I? That should help us out. I put the trim in the wrong spot. Now that we have that, we can collapse this back down into one line, which is typically how we like to see it. So I'm just going to bring all of this back down. So now, if I scroll over here, it looks like this. And it says, if the number of results is not equal to 0, then go ahead and write that out. And we're going to do that for each of these inputs. So that one was for shipper ID. I'm going to copy value equals all the way to that second double quote. I'm going to copy this, and for company name, I'm going to paste it in there as well. But this is going to need to be company name. And then for phone, I'm going to paste it in to that one as well, and that one's going to have to change to phone. So now I've done that for those three variables, and we can come back to looking at that shipper ID once again. The last thing we need on this page is we want to make the shipper ID so that the user cannot change it. So I started to put this input on a second line, and what we're essentially going to do is duplicate this. I'm going to copy that entire input, and I'm going to put it right underneath each other. So we have essentially the same input twice, but one of these is going to be disabled and the other one is going to be hidden. So the second one I'm going to make hidden. It's going to keep name equals shipper ID, ID equals shipper ID, but type equal text is going to change to type equal hidden, and that's going to make it invisible on the page. But the thing is, this one here, type equal hidden, that's the one that's going to get sent to the next page. This one up above, we are going to put disabled equals disabled into it, which is going to make it grayed out and so that we can't change the value. But when you use disabled in an input, it does not go to the next page. So this one will not go. Now the other thing is, I have to have different names and IDs. So I'm going to put a DIS at the end on this first one. So this one will not go on to the next page because it is disabled. This one will go to the next page even though it's hidden. You have to have both of them for this to work. And that's going to finish up our update page. Let's go ahead and save that, and let's come and look at it. So we've got a couple of things here going on that we can come and fix. Access denied for user, so I should be able to fix that pretty quick. Remember that we copied and pasted from that select page, but we forgot a couple of important things. The first thing we forgot is to include OpenDBCon, and we also forgot to include CloseDBCon. Save that, come back here and refresh this page, and now it's looking better. We've got the auto population. If we come to insert, come back to update, so it's the same page, but we've got the auto population going. Now it looks like I need to change this heading here, so let's do that real quick. And we'll make it update shipper ID number 2. We come back and look at this. So this is going to update, and we probably want to change the text on that to update as well. So we'll come down here in the value equals, and we'll just change that to update info. And I think we're pretty well done with this page. Now this is going to go to a page called doUpdate. So when I click this link, that's interesting. We actually wound up back, let me bring this down, we actually wound up back on insert.php. So there's one more thing we need to change. We need to change the action. I'm doing a little too much copying and pasting. So the action needs to go to doUpdate.php. Let's save that. And now let's come back to the update page, hit update, and now as expected we get a 404 because we have not created doUpdate. So let's create it. We need a new file, PHP, Control-A, delete, and everything in it will be PHP. It's just a processing page. We can start off this page with a lot of the similar things that we had in the do insert page. So I need to open up my session start. I need to grab those 3 variables once again. So I'm going to copy that and come over to my update page that I've not saved yet. And I'll go ahead and save that as doUpdate. And now we're going to make sure that we have the contents just like we did before. But in this one, it is okay. It is okay if company name and phone are left off. So we could empty those and we could update it. The one we care about is shipper ID. So I'm just going to grab this first part. Just trying to reduce the typing here. And the only thing I really need in this is if shipper ID is equal to the empty string, I'm going to change this and use empty. So if shipper ID is empty, then we're going to do something. Now here's the thing about shipper ID. If shipper ID is empty coming to this page, that means that somebody typed in the URL. Because of the way the previous page is made, you cannot get to this page without having a shipper ID. So all we really want to do in here is I'm going to remove this line because it's not exactly true. All we want to do is redirect them away from here, and we're going to take them back to select. So again, if the shipper ID is empty, that's just not likely. That about the only way that can happen is if they literally type the URL into the browser, bypassing the previous page. So assuming we get this far, we need to formulate our SQL query. Our SQL query is going to look like update, table name, set name equal value. So set company name equal to some value, comma, phone equal to some value, where shipper ID is equal to some value. Now, shipper ID is an integer, so we don't need the single quotes. So I'm going to concatenate on shipper ID here at the end. As for these other two, we're going to do concatenation just like we had done before. So in between those single quotes, we're going to put double quote, and in between those, period, period, and in between that, the name of the variable. We'll do it one more time in between these single quotes, double quote, period, period, the name of the variable. And now, to make sure that it's formulated properly, we should really do an echo statement and write it out so that we can see it. There's one more line up here that I'd like to add. We'll do an include statement, and we'll get OpenDBCon ready for us. So I'm going to save this doUpdate. Now we can actually navigate to it, but it's going to land on that page. It's not going to pass through it. So let's say that I have modified the company name and I hit update info. I land here and it says company name equals value, comma, phone equals value, where shipper ID equals 2. That's great. That's exactly what I'm wanting. And so if something was wrong, you probably would have seen it written out there to the browser. There's very little left. I'll comment this out. I usually leave it in there in case there's problems later, so I can just uncomment it. We need that line using result equals MySQL query and pass it the SQL statement. And then we need to close our database connection. So I'm going to copy this, come down here to the bottom, and close it. And lastly, we need to redirect the user. And we're going to redirect them back to the select page so that they can see the updates. And that finishes out this page. So let's do a save, and let's come back over here. And we'll go to update, and we'll type something here and something there and hit update, and we come back over to here, and number 2 has the garbage I added and the extra 5 I added. Let's come back to update once again, and let's change it back. Got rid of that garbage. Let's go to the update again, get rid of that 5. And so you can continue to do this. Now, we had an error check in there for whether the two existed. And so we're going to have to do the delete in order to get to that point. And that's what's coming up here next. So delete is going to be a very quick page. And actually, I'm going to start by copying doUpdate. And I'm going to just call it delete, and then we're going to modify it. So I'm going to copy this, paste it, call it delete.php. You might, I suppose I could see an argument to call it doDelete.php. Let's go ahead and open up delete.php. Now we don't need as much of this. There's no preceding form, so there's no variables that we need to grab from the preceding page. Again, there's not a shipper ID being sent from the previous page. And on this one, we are once again hard coding it. And so basically, I'll go from scratch here. Delete from table name where primary key is equal to some value. Again, shipper ID is an integer, so we don't need the single quotes. And we simply concatenate on, well, sorry. We are hard coding at number 2. So we're simply making it like this. Make it a little bit shorter and quicker. We don't need that. We will execute it against the database. We'll close the connection, and we'll redirect back to select.php. And we are done with the delete page. That's all that goes into it. Let's come out here and try it. So let's go to select. We can see that there is a 2 there. And we'll hit delete, and it will briefly refresh, and 2 down here will be gone. So it's gone. Now let's go to update. We get an error message that says you must first insert a shipper with ID of 2. So we can't do anything here. We have to go to insert, type a 2, and then whatever you want to call it. Now we have a 2 there again with the garbage that I typed, and I can come back to update at this point, and I can change anything about it that I want, and it's still there. It gets changed, and I can hit delete again, and it's gone. And so that completes our assignment 5. But before we are truly finished with it, we've got to look at validation. So we're going to bring back out the total validator tool, and we want to look at the insert page and the update page. There's not a delete page to look at, but we want to look at those and make sure that we don't have any problems. So we have the select page chosen there. We'll do a validate, and let's get this into view here. And this is what you want to see. Total errors found, 0. So that one looks great. Let's come back to the total validator tool. Let's change select to insert and hit validate. Oh, we've got a warning here. And what we have here is we have some incorrect HTML. So let's get that fixed. Let's go look at insert and see what we've got there. Over to insert. Oh, remember when we created insert, we copied this from assignment 3. Assignment 3 uses HTML 4.01 strict, and this assignment uses XHTML5. So the doc type tag is wrong, the meta tag is wrong. Let's go to select.php, and we're going to grab the doc type through the, what do we have? We're going to grab the doc type in the HTML to start. Copy that, come over to insert, and let's replace the doc type in the HTML. So now I have the doc type for XHTML5. I've got the title here, but my meta tag is wrong. So I'm going to grab the correct meta tag and overwrite that. Save, and you would have missed points if you left it that way and turned it in. You would have been docked points because it does not. Yours would not have validated as XHTML5. That's why we have the validator. So now let's come back to total validator. It is pointing to insert.php, validating that it's HTML5. We'll validate this. We have total errors found, 0. That's great. We have one more page. For this one, we have the update page. Validate it. Again, we have the same issue. Because of copying other files, the update page does not match up. So I'm going to grab the correct doc type and HTML tag, copy that, and in the update page, I'm going to paste in the correct doc type and HTML tag, and I also need to change the meta tag. So I'll grab the meta tag, come over here, and replace the meta tag here. I'll save this. I'll come back to the total validator and hit validate once again. And now I've got total errors found 4. So we'll scroll down here and let's see what we have. The value of the for attribute must match the ID of a control element in the same form. So we're on or about line 27, it looks like. Which is not correct, but we'll scroll down here and see what we have here. When we made these changes, we created a hidden input type, and this for needs to point at the one that is not hidden. So I'm going to grab the ID off of the disabled one and put for equals that ID so that these two match. And let's save that one item, and let's try the validator again and see what we have. Now we have one error. Let's scroll down here. The max length attribute is not allowed for input type, and so we've got type equal hidden, so yes, obviously size and max length should not be in there. So again, our copying and pasting, type equal hidden, size and max length we'll get rid of. Let's save this again, come back to our validator tool and validate this again. We have total errors 0. That is what you need to do for all of your assignments. and make sure that they are all validating. This one's a little different with HTML5, but still something you need to do. So that wraps up our assignment that integrates PHP and SQL together, doing select, insert, update, and delete from a MySQL database.